Next, let's go ahead and do our sum of squares within groups. Okay, so once again, we're just going to plug in those values. So our sum of raw scores for group 1 squared, that's this value here. So we've got 3,077 minus the sum of raw scores for group 1, which is this value here. So we have 123. That is going to get squared, and that's going over our end value for that group as well, which is 5. Okay, then we are going to add that to the sum of raw scores squared for group 2, which is this value here. So we have 1897 minus the sum of the raw scores for group 2 here, 97, and that's squared, and that's going over our end value of 5. Okay, and then we've got our sum of raw scores squared for group 3, which is 1077 minus the sum of raw scores for group 3 here, which is 73, and that's going to be squared over our end value of 5. Okay, all right, so let's go ahead and start working that out. So when we square 123, so see here, we'll get 3,077 minus 123 squared, which is 15,129 over 5. And then we'll have 1897 minus the 97 squared is 9409 over 5. And then we'll have 1077 minus 73 squared, which is 5329 over 5. Okay, so let's go ahead and divide those out. So we will have 3,077 minus 3025.8. Okay, and then plus 1897 minus 1881.8. And then we are going to have 1077 minus 1065.8. Okay, so let's go ahead and subtract those. So that is going to give us 51.2 plus 15.2 plus 11.2. Okay, so then we can just add all of those up, and that is going to give us 77.6. So our SSW is going to be 77.6. Okay, then we can go ahead and take our table out and write that value in there. So we've got 77.6. Okay, so one of the ways in which you can check to make sure that your numbers are correct is when you have your SS between groups and your SS within groups, they should equal your SST. That will tell you if you are doing your math correctly. So let's go ahead and check. So we have 250.13 plus 77.6. That is going to give us 327.73. Okay, so far so good. Now let's go ahead and find our degrees of freedom. So our degrees of freedom total is n minus 1. So degrees of freedom total is n, our n value is 15 minus 1 equals 14. Okay, and then degrees of freedom between groups is k minus 1, k is 3, 3 minus 1 equals 2. And then degrees of freedom within groups is n minus k, so 15 minus 3, and that is going to give us 12. Okay, so let's go ahead and write that on our table here. So we have the degrees of freedom between groups, which is here, which is 2. And then we have the degrees of freedom within groups of 12 and the degrees of freedom total, which is 14. And we can do exactly what we just did before to double check. 2 plus 12 equals 14. Now let's go ahead and find our MSB and our MSW. Okay, so if we pull out our chart here, we take our SSB and our DFB and divide them. So we would take 250.13 and divide that by 2. And that's going to give us our MSB. Okay, so when we divide those two numbers, that's going to give us 125.07. And then for this one, we do the same thing. So for MSW, we take 77.6, divide that by 12, and that is going to give us 6.47. Okay, so another way that you can do it too is when you use your chart, you can just take and make a little division symbol right here, and then you just divide these two numbers. So divide 250.13 by 2, and that gives us 125.07, and then you do the same thing here. So 77.6 divided by 12, and that's going to give us 6.47. Lastly, let's go ahead and find that F value. So we are going to take our MSB value and divide that by our MSW value. So it's just these two values right here. So we are going to take 125.07, divide that by 647, and that is going to give us 19.33 as our final F value. So we'll put that in here, 19.33. Now that we have our final calculated F value, let's go ahead and see if we are going to accept or reject HO. So you are going to need your table. This is table G. So for your 0.01 and 0.05 values, there's actually two numbers that go in there. And your degrees of freedom between is going to go here, and your degrees of freedom within is going to go here. So if we pull out our sheet here, so we have our degrees of freedom between, that goes here, and then within, that goes here. And that goes for both of those. Okay? So then, when you look up on your chart, your degrees of freedom within is going to be down this column here, and then degrees of freedom between is going to be across here. So, since this is between and this is within, okay, so first we go over to 2 because that's our degrees of freedom with between, and then we go all the way down to 12. So we have two values here. Now the bolded value is the 0.01 level. So for a 0.01, we have a value of 6.93. And then for our 0.05, we have 3.88. Okay, so now let's take our F value here. So we have 19.33. Is that greater than 6.93? Yes. Is 19.33 greater than 3.88? Yes, it is. So since our 6.93 is our larger value, and that is at the 0.01 level, that means that we reject HO at the 0.01 level. Okay, and we can go ahead and get our little chart here, and we put 0.01, less than 0.01. Okay, and now that we've rejected, that means that we get to do two keys.